Well, let's bring in two colleagues now from the Parliamentary Press Gallery. Marieke Walsh is a reporter with the Globe and Mail, and Joël-Denis Bellavance is the Parliamentary Bureau Chief for La Presse. Good to see you both. Marieke, let's start with this faux pas at Foreign Affairs. The minister saying it's unacceptable, but minister wouldn't answer questions about whether she knew in advance about this visit to the Russian Day celebration or not by a Canadian Foreign Affairs official. So what do you make of this?
Well, certainly it's interesting that she's not answering that question, right, Peter? Because if she knew about it, then it raises questions about her own political judgment. If she didn't know about it and she's trying not to throw her colleagues, the bureaucrats in her department, under the bus, then maybe that speaks to some ministerial accountability. But certainly it's clear that the government realized too late that this was unacceptable.
Joël-Denis, what are your thoughts on this, and whether there's a disconnect here? Because if the minister didn't know about it, what's the Department of Foreign Affairs doing sending people to a Russia Day celebration?
Yeah, there is clearly a lack of communications. I think the latest news on the war in Ukraine was not sent to that particular employee of the Foreign Affairs Department. But clearly, I'm sure that Madame Joly is really angry. Well, that's what she says publicly. But I think there's probably one person who's even more angry, if I may say. That would be Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance, Chrystia Freeland, because she's been the lead person, if I may say, on the Russia-Ukraine file since the beginning. And she also managed to assemble a coalition of the willing, if I may say, of like-minded countries to impose very severe sanctions on Russia. So I'm sure that message is not, running well across not only the country, but also across other allies of Canada that are trying to force Russia out of Ukraine.
And are there sort of different levels, Marieke, to the relationship? Because we haven't expelled the Russian ambassador to Canada. We maintain a Canadian ambassador in Russia. So we are maintaining diplomatic ties. So some might argue, look, this is keeping channels open by sending somebody to this celebration, but is that too much of a reach?
I think it is. I mean, I think, the Conservatives are already attacking the Liberals for keeping the embassy open at all. The Liberals explain keeping it open as that need to keep lines of communications open, but that doesn't mean you need to go to parties to celebrate the Federation. I think that's where the step is too far. And I think that's why we saw the government climb down so quickly from defending it to then apologizing for it, because they realized it was an untenable move. And as Joël-Denis said, very dramatically out of step with all of the messages from the government since February and before then. And I don't think it's only Chrystia Freeland who has taken on that mantle. I think Mélanie Joly has also really tried to own that mantle of supporting Ukraine. And so it's out of step with her own personal politics right now.
All right, Joël-Denis, sorry, jump in. Go ahead. Yeah.
Quickly, if I may add on this one, it may also be used by Russia for propaganda purposes. So that's, not only damage control here in Canada, but the Canada may have to also to face some propaganda from Russia that using this as a way that things are going back to normal.
All right, let's talk about the Conservative leadership race now. Marieke, the latest developments, almost all of the other candidates lining up to attack Pierre Poilievre over his claims of membership recruitment. What do you think this tells us about how the vetting process will go for these memberships? The party's going to take some time to vet all these memberships. Should we expect a lot of challenges coming from other leadership candidates who don't believe the numbers, challenge the numbers, or at least do so publicly?
I think it shows you the monumental task ahead for the party, which they say they will be able to do, process all of these new memberships, verify all of them before all of the timelines to get the paper ballots out, mail them out, get them mailed back in. I think in terms of the strategy for the campaigns, though, for the opponents of Pierre Poilievre, I think it shows that they really are on their back foot right now, because Pierre Poilievre is the only one who has come close to showing any kind of receipts or detailed breakdown of his numbers, which means it's also the easiest to then challenge him when those finalized numbers come out from the party. The other opponents are all criticizing Pierre Poilievre's campaign's numbers and raising skepticism and doubt around them, but not actually showing anything from their own. And when you look at having more than 600,000 members in the party, 300,000 from Pierre Poilievre actually seems like it could be possible, depending on what the other campaigns came up with, which they won't tell us.
Yeah, interesting. Joël-Denis, what are your thoughts on this? Jean Charest, coined another phrase over the weekend, Pierre inflation. He's now coined it for what he says are the exaggerated membership claims by Pierre Poilievre. Says must be recruiting members in New Hampshire, according to Jean Charest. But what about the Charest strategy here, and which is to basically suggest that Poilievre's not telling the truth about those claims?
Well, you need to bring in some evidence that Mr. Poilievre is not telling the truth about the numbers, but so far the other camps have not done it. So we're forced to believe what Mr. Poilievre is saying, and what the other camps are saying. It is not. Yes, they are attacking the numbers, but what's the proof that it's not valid? And in the meantime, I think the task of the party is to make sure that this does not turn into a shouting match for 2 months about the numbers of the memberships. Otherwise, people will lose interest in that leadership race. And I think it would be to the advantage of the party to say right away, we will organize another debate. So you change the tune and the narrative on this race, which is right now about fights about the number of memberships, to about more policies of what the candidates would be proposing. So it might be to the advantage of the party to have that third debate that some candidates are demanding.
Yeah, most of them, I think, are up for another debate. But Marieke, what kind of challenges, if it's a lengthy vetting process, the party's promising, look, you'll get lists, no later than the end of July. That's an awful long time away. And what kind of a challenge does that present for the other candidates in terms of trying to go after people who may have signed on with other candidates as their supporters, but they're the people they try to reach in this persuasion phase to convince them to come over to them?
Exactly. The persuasion phase is essentially on hold for a month, Peter. And maybe that's why, as Joël-Denis said, we have this fight over numbers, because there's not much else to talk about. Because until they have the contact details for all of these new members, they can't contact them. They can't try to convince them, which makes the already uphill battle of convincing somebody who signed up for Pierre Poilievre to switch to Charest even more challenging, because the timeline is so much shorter. I'm curious if the party will actually move ahead with another debate, only in part because I think that it's another task for them to do when they already have a mountain of work ahead of them. And we'll see, I guess, if they do decide to do it. But all candidates, if they do decide to schedule, would have to attend, because there are penalties if they don't.
All right, fairly quick answers needed here in the time we have left. But Joël-Denis, lots more questions for the Public Safety Minister, Marco Mendicino, over the decision to invoke the Emergencies Act and why it was done and at whose behest. What do you think of how he's handling these questions?
Well, poorly, if I may say, because there are two versions that are contradictory, and only one of them is true, obviously. One version is that the minister was asked by a police organization to invoke the law, and the other version is that they didn't ask for it, but we're happy to get the new additional powers that were, part of the invocation of the La Loi sur les mesures d'urgence Emergencies Act. So I guess the only way to find out is if the cabinet release confidential documents to Justice Rouleau, who's actually looking at this in his inquiry. That's the only way we'll be able to go to the bottom of this affair. But clearly, Mr. Mendicino is on the defensive in the House of Commons today, and he will be for the remaining of the session.
What are your thoughts on that, Marieke?
Certainly, I'm not sure that we've seen the government commit to releasing those cabinet documents. I think the journalists and many other people would be keen to see them as well. I think, for the government, you would have expected that they would have a more clear explanation of events, given the unprecedented nature of this invoking of the act. The fact that it was going to spark this review from the justice, that it was going to spark a committee hearing on this. You would think that they had a lot going on in February with the convoys, but that would be really buttoned down. And it's surprising to me that this is actually tripping them up right now.
All right. We'll see where it goes. Thank you both, Marieke Walsh and J.D. Bellavance. Good to talk to you both.
Thank you.